Welcome to A Scout Is. Tonight we have some guests in studio from Troop 22 in Whitman, and we're going to talk about an annual thing that they do during the winter. Boy, that makes me feel cold, even sitting here in our nice warm studio, called Gold Rush. And Scoutmaster Mike Warner, tell me what Gold Rush is.
So Gold Rush is something that the troop has hosted now for 12 years, and it is a competition. So we invite other scout units, Cub Scouts, Boy Scout units, Girl Scouts, venture crews, and they come and they compete in a series of events throughout the day outside. And a lot of them are scouting kind of skills. So there's fire starting, there's cooking, but there's also other things. There's team building skills, there's challenges, puzzles, and then there's some physical stuff, races and strength tests and things like that go on throughout the day. And of course, some folks win and some folks almost win.
Almost. Now, how did it get the name Gold Rush?
So when we started this many years ago, we looked at a couple of different ways to really kind of focus what the event would be about. And one of the scouts at that time had suggested that we really kind of put a theme behind it, and he had suggested the Yukon Gold Rush back in the 1800s. And the original concept was that as you went through, you weren't scored with points, you were actually handed pieces of gold, rocks that we'd spray painted gold. And at the end of the day, the person with the most amount of gold won. We thought it was humorous because that also meant that throughout the day, the more successful you were, the more rocks you were carrying around, which actually helped to slow down some of those more successful folks and let some of the less maybe skilled or younger scouts catch up to them. So it actually was a great way to moderate the
great
event.
equalizer, huh?
It was, especially because we used rocks about the size of your hand our first year. So
carrying around a ton of rocks would do
Yes.
that to you.
Yeah.
And then one year we did cards, right?
We did. We've done cards. We've done a whole bunch of different things since then. You're right,
Yep.
Lucas. Yeah.
Now, there's one other thing. When you've got a pile of rocks, all these gold-painted rocks at the end of the day, what do you do with them then?
What do we do at the end of the day, guys?
We have an
Well-
auction.
And we trade them in for like coins or whatever we use, and then we have a big auction on everything, mostly like knives and camping wear and stuff. Like
So a lot of stuff that you can actually use for other things that you do as scouting.
Mm-hmm.
As scouting. That's
Yep.
two sentences just got mixed up in the middle there. Okay, this year it was not, or I should say this past year, it was not a load of rocks that people were carrying around with them, though. You made a little bit of a change there.
Yes, this year it was gems that they were carrying this year. So throughout the day they were carrying gems, but we also had yet another option that was in there, which was cash, and we introduced a stock market this year. And that was probably the biggest change that we made. Was during the day they could take their earnings and invest it through a mobile app that some of the scouts helped to build and put together. So we were a mobile-enabled event. They could sell or buy stock throughout the day, and of course, we introduced the same kind of things you'd see in a real stock market. You start to buy, the price goes up. You start to sell, the price of that stock goes down. But it wasn't predictable, as the stock market isn't. So there were some great lessons for them about investing money, but it was done in a fun game way.
How did you manage to do that? I mean, over such a short amount of time to have the stocks going up and down?
Well, we had about 170 scouts, I think, last year.
I believe so, yeah.
23 or 24 teams were competing. So
And from
that many
everywhere.
people competing in a short period of time, it hyper accelerated the whole stock market piece. And then there were certain events that we could run on the back end. So you might get to the town and there could be a shipwreck that had happened, and they would announce to the teams coming in there was just a shipwreck, and all of the furs that were supposed to be sent were lost at sea. So now the price of furs went up, and we would actually increase the furs up or down, and all of the things. We had 10 different events, so it could be gold or silver or zinc, and firs, timbers, things like that. So these random events occurred during the day, and that also drove people who might have been trying to bank on one stock to all of a sudden say, wow, that's a much better stock. So you'd see whole groups just move over.
And some others going bankrupt when the stock becomes worthless?
And there were some that were holding on and probably should have cashed out earlier. But again, this is the welcome to the stock market concept.
And all the trucks were by, and everybody just sold what they could and got what they could.
Yep.
Any of that stock market stuff going to carry over to this coming year?
So this year we're not. This year we're made another shift, and this year we're actually throwing Indiana Jones in this year. So in this case, they have to make their way through the Yukon. Indiana Jones has gone inside an ancient Native American temple that was hidden somewhere in the Yukon mountains. So they have to find their way to the temple, and then they have to go through a series of challenges. Some of them are very familiar to those who've seen the Indiana Jones movies. So having to find your way to walk through certain places, all that sort of stuff. And I understand this year we may find Indiana Jones somewhere in there. So it makes it interesting.
Well, you know something, it looks like all that stock I bought from the Scouts last year afterwards is now absolutely worthless. I just lost my shirt.
All gone.
Okay, now you have a lot of work that you do to set this up. The contest runs on Saturday, right?
Correct. It's a full weekend. So the troop hosts this and invites others. Our troop is rather large, so we have about 50 scouts that are on the staff. Plus a good number, probably 15 to 20 adults, including many of our senior scouts who themselves are now 18, 20, 22, whatever. They'll come back for this event and help us. And so we go Friday night. Everything is actually already planned. Everything's built. We go in, set up, have a nice night, and kind of do our last minute preparation. And then we might be able to do a little setting out that night, but the goal is at about 6 o'clock the next morning. Troops up, they're out there, they're setting up their stations because our competitors are coming in starting at 8 o'clock, and they're doing their whole check-in, and we make sure they have what they need and give them their information. And 9 o'clock the event starts, and it's over at 4 o'clock.
Where do you actually do this? Well, okay, is that done at Squanto?
No, so this year we're at Camp Nourse, which is in Kingston. It's been there a couple of years now, but we have done it at 3 or 4 different places, up at the Blue Hills, down in Cape Cod. We did that several years. We do kind of like to shift around a little bit.
I've also heard about your famous speech to the troops on Friday nights. Were you guys working that, or were you competing this
I was,
time?
I don't know if I was working, but...
Were you down there on Friday night for all the pre-setup stuff?
I think I was, yes, but...
Bryce, were you in on any of that?
Can't remember back that far.
Yeah, same here.
So tell me a little bit more about your famous speech to the troops.
Well, I mean, on Friday night, it really is bringing the staff together and let them know that this is a great opportunity for them to run something. It's very difficult to really kind of get the idea of what's behind running an event that will have 150 plus participants. There's 70 or so of us, troop and adults, and then visitors, folks that come, parents.
Lots of other troops.
Yeah.
Lots of other troops.
There were 23 troops, other units, as I said, PAX troops, et cetera. But all said and done, we're about 450 at the event. So a big chunk of it is just reminding the scouts that their goal is, one, make sure everybody stays warm, stays safe, that we have a lot of fun, and then the hard part is you have to actually judge other people's performance and score them fairly. And for many scouts, that's the first time doing that, right? It's a little hard sometimes, especially if you have a friend who's in that group that's coming through. So,
boy, it almost sounds like the Winter Olympics. You've got a certain number of people participating in the events, and then all these other hundreds of people that are standing around watching.
It is. It's very much like that. And again, it's a great time. We've had some really cold weekends. Last year was not bad at all. We had a nice little bit of covering of snow on there. It was it was a winter day, but it still wasn't terribly bad. But that, of course, just means that more people are going to come down.
And then I think a couple years ago, I think when I was competing, there was lots of snow, and we had to use wheels instead. Well, not wheels. We had to use the skis instead of the wheels because there was so much snow.
Wheels don't do well in loose snow.
No.
There's
not at
also a
all.
lot of water.
Yeah, lots of water.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Well, skis don't do that well in water either.
Yeah.
I've got an injury to I can show you about that one.
Yeah, but again, there's the prepared aspect, right? And this is part of what the scouting program tries to do, is teach you to dress and take care of yourself in a variety of things. And this helps you your entire life, because weather is weather.
And that brings up the Scout motto, be prepared.
It is, yeah.
Okay, now, first thing in the morning, what happens?
Well, we try and get Lucas out of bed. That's probably the first thing. Once we get the scouts up, which is not generally that hard, because once somebody makes noise, we're all up.
Well, once the bacon starts frying.
Well, yes, and
Yes.
we do. We have
Good
a
breakfast.
good breakfast.
Hot
That first
cocoa.
day, it's hot cocoa, French toast, sausages, because you're going to be out, so we want you to have a lot of fuel. So what we'll see is a lot of the scouts will go out there and start to set up their areas around the play field, and then we have a kitchen crew, generally 5 or 6 folks that are in charge of that, scouts and a couple of adults that do all the cooking and such for the day. Then everybody comes back, we have our meal, we do final preparations, make sure that everybody has hats, sashes, because our staff you have to be able to easily find them. And then that's pretty much it. We open it up and wait for our visitors to come in and check in.
Okay, now they start coming in about 8 o'clock.
About 8.
And they have to arrange themselves too.
Right.
How much time do they get to get their act together before the competition starts?
Well, okay, so there's kind of 2 answers to that. One is they can't check in until they have their entire team together.
Yeah.
So you can't come in and say, well, I'm going to check us in, but the other 6 people aren't here yet. Nope.
Has to be
We
all
need
together.
to know who's here. But we've actually already started. So we've already had communications go out since September to the other units. Here's what some of the events are. We try and give them hints, but we do not tell them everything that's going to happen that day. We give them a list of things to bring or suggestions. They can bring those things or not. And throughout the day, having that list that we give them, we don't pack it with extra. We tell them exactly what you'll need to be successful. But if they elect not to bring some of that or change some of those things, they could be in a good challenge throughout the day. And I know, Bryce, you've done this. You normally have done our fire starting station,
Yeah.
and they'll show up with not the right wood or wet wood, and you charge them for the wood that you have there, right? So they have to turn in some of their winnings.
Yeah, well, sometimes you're just not prepared enough.
That's right. So, and there's the part of it. So if you come prepared, you should be able to go through the day reasonably well.
And you do want to be able to start a fire if that's what your task is at that.
You might need a fire, you might not. Who knows?
Just to cook hot cocoa for lunch.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Now, you're in the main building area down there with all these people gathered around. How do you get everybody together to start?
Well, again, once everyone has checked through, and we have some kind of little small events. So the first people through there's a couple of games. We do have a map that they'll be going through the whole day. They can study the map, they can take notes. It's a great opportunity for them to kind of, now that they're here, know what they're going to walk into, because they don't have that information prior to Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So it's their time. How they would like to use it is up to them. But at 9 o'clock, we do a quick reminder, get everybody together, make sure that people have their material. We always remind them, again, stay warm, stay hydrated. It's cold will pull the moisture out of you faster than the heat will. So we want them to be careful, and then we announce them to go out into the parade field, which is where the flag ceremony, and that's how we start it.
There comes that great slogan again, be prepared.
Absolutely. And again, it's having the flag ceremony is very important to us, particularly our troop. Bryce's brother is now serving. We have 12 scouts that, since I've been scoutmaster, are either in the military today or have already done their service and are back out. So we're very tied into the military, and therefore showing the flags and properly treated them is very important for us.
And you always seem to, in other events too, always think about the guys that are in the service that are from the troop.
Absolutely. We just ran our Thanksgiving in the woods, and we actually, Bryce, you took care of the plate this year, right?
Yeah.
So we always put a place setting. You see a lot of restaurants will do this, and the first plate through the meal line is set aside for our scouts.
Okay, now everybody's set. They've done all the preliminaries. The flag ceremony is over. How do things start next for the actual competitions?
So the person who's running the event, there's one or two people that are in charge of the whole event. And it's broken up into a series of stations, or what we call towns. So there's a mayor for each town.
Yeah, and you just travel all over the place, and you have the map, and you go to the different places and do the challenge, and you earn goals or whatever you're doing
So it's
for
kind of
completing the challenge.
Kind of like making a loop when you start off
Yeah,
from the main cabin and you go out and around and you wind up back there again.
And you have a piece of paper that tells you where to go and when to do it.
Yep.
Okay, now we want to get kind of specific about this year because I have a lot of pictures I'm going to have to put into this program after we finish here in the studio. What was the first station that people had to do this year?
There's one or two
Or is it
stations, right?
like a scramble? You know, in golf, everybody starts off in a different place.
It's this year, because of the numbers, you're right, Bryce. We had two towns that were across from each other, but they both ran the exact same events. And this is to help with 150 people. If they went to one town, it would just be a traffic jam. So we broke it
Crowded.
apart. And at each one, there was a series of challenges for them. And these were physical challenges. The last thing is there's a ski, what do they call it? A ski walk, I guess,
walk,
right?
yeah.
So you've got like a long piece of wood with rope tied to it. You get 4 or 5 people,
Oh, yeah,
and
you
they
have
each
to-
have it, and then they have to coordinate as they move forward. But you had to actually go to the other town, and when you got to the other town, then you were able to go to the next station from there. And that first station, those two first stations are super important to setting the day for us, because it allows for the teams that maybe are really prepared to just go through and move. Those that are a little less prepared, they can think about it, they can observe another group, how did they approach some of these challenges, but it stretches out the rest of the teams for the day.
Okay, so first challenge. What was that this past year?
So it, as Lucas said,
Other
there's-
than the
there's
steps
actually
that-
3 of them. So in this one, trying to remember the others that we had in that, but there was a knot challenge that was there.
No, I was
And
thinking
remember
of something
the ski
else.
sal-
Anybody say that's not a challenge?
Oh, well, no, they find the challenge, all right. But then the second station is again broke. There's two places, and we have Cub Scouts, which are the younger, prior to middle school age scouts. So they went to the station where they had to do a few things. They have to identify tracks. They have to tell the distance without walking it. So they're estimating distance. It's actually a mathematical function for them. And then they had spears. So they had to spear the bear. So it's a throw the spear, and it's all run in a range with safety equipment and everything. The older scouts, they had the same kind of things. They still have the track knowledge, so it's a series of plaster casts of animals you'd find in this area. You have to identify the track to what the animal is. They have to estimate the height of an object. Again, they can do that with a watch, an old analog watch with hands. They can do that with a compass. There's several other ways, but these are all things that they should, at this point, know. And then we use potato cannons.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, 1 year instead of in the archery range we did potato cannons, and you literally you need at least 5 or 6 people to hold the thing.
Oh, those sounds like big potato
They're good,
cannons.
good-sized potato cannons.
Yeah, very big.
And if you get any bigger, you're going to have to start using pumpkins, huh?
Done that.
Okay, now that's
That's our second pair of stations.
okay.
The third station, I don't know, are you running it again in this year, or?
I might.
You might be, okay.
Well,
so
that would make year, what, 4?
this would be 4, yeah. So
Yeah.
Rice has done this station now for the rest of 3 years. He's mastered the station, which is really about fire starting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the fire starting
So
station.
they have to
yep.
go to his station, and at this one, they have to identify the wood that you would use
And you have to
start
cut
a
it.
fire. You have to cut it, you have to split it, and then you have to build the fire and finally light the fire. And last year they had to boil
Yeah.
a
The
cup
water.
of water.
And you had to make hot cocoa with
Well,
it.
at the bottom of the hill.
You had to carry the hot boiling water down to the bottom of the hill, and then they
Get
made
the
hot
hot
cocoa for
cocoa.
lunch.
Yep. So if you didn't spill all your hot water, you get to the bottom, you get a packet of cocoa, and now at least somebody had to drink a hot cocoa.
Okay, as long as I didn't have to ski down, because I don't know how many of these guys have.
No,
have,
that would be a little hard
experienced
on that
skiing.
hill.
Yeah.
And that's the fourth station. It's actually the midpoint of the day because at that point they're halfway around the entire course, and that's where lunch is.
And right before that, there's a gigantic hill that you have to go up to get there. So
Where's
it's
our
very
limbo?
hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's you at?
Yep. And last year it was a backpack style meal. So this meant that they weren't allowed to
Yeah.
have ground fires.
You had to bring only what you could fit in your backpack.
Yep. So no big Dutch ovens, although somebody had wanted to do a Dutch oven. We thought, oh, that's great, but you'll have to
Must have
carry
been Jim Ken.
I don't know. You'll have to carry this thing with you
Yep.
for the whole day. But no, it was all backpack style, and they have to not only cook the meal themselves, they have to bring the menu, the shopping list, and the equipment list, so that they've proved to us that they've actually thought about this before they got there Saturday morning. And then they make a small sampler plate, and that goes to the judge, and they're awarded points based upon the taste, the preparation, etc.
In other words, no cup of noodles type stuff.
No noodles.
I think last year we made chicken, broccoli, and ziti.
Oh.
And I think one year we made cheeseburgers, but somebody in our patrol had to have a veggie burger, so we had to use 2 completely different things to help cook it, and it was kind of a lot of things to cook
Yeah.
because
A little
we had to
extra
cook 2
challenge.
separate meats and broccoli and pasta.
And how did people like the?
The noodles were frozen overnight, so we kind of had to warm them up, but we weren't really that. We didn't really think the noodles were that good, but other than that, it was pretty good. Yeah, most people liked it a lot. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, after lunch.
After lunch,
They go up
they now go up a hill from
Yeah,
there.
another one.
And there was a GPS course that they had to follow, and each team had a separate set of coordinates. So you're going and you're seeing all of these canisters. If you've ever done geocaching, it's basically a fun game where you use your geo coordinates to locate small buckets or chests, and sometimes there's something in it. We followed that same thing, but it had to be your bucket or chest. So as you're going, you would see them all over the place. You just had to find out which one was the right one for you. And that led them up to stations that we had with, there was a first aid station where they had to, demonstrate first aid skills for broken arms and cuts.
You had to make splints, and
Transport.
you had to learn how to transport somebody. Like, say they had a broken knee or a sprained knee, you would need to learn how to transport them from one place to another.
Yep. And then the last event of the day, it was a lumberjack festival. So
Oh,
we
yeah,
used
yeah,
a
yeah.
really large area. It's the same place we have our flag ceremony. It's a big parade field, about the size of a baseball diamond. And there were 10 activities that they were allowed to now choose which activities to do, which ones they wanted to skip. It was completely up to them. They could make a lot of money, gold, at that place, and it's up to them.
One of the stock market, as it were.
And we did have a stock market set up, so you could actually go right there to the banker and buy and trade stock there, as well as with your app. But we had 2-man saws, the big ones that you'll see. It actually takes 2 full-size people to run those saws. Axe yards. It was a knife throw. There was a tomahawk throw. There's a couple of just about moving logs, 20 or 30
Oh
foot
yeah,
logs.
yeah. You had to bring it from one place to another, and then you had to bring it back, and it was quite challenging for my group.
And the crane. You also
Yes.
have the crane, which is kind of a challenge. It's 4 people on ropes, and you have to pick up a bucket and move it from place to place.
There was 4 people.
But you're not allowed to touch the bucket.
Yeah, one on each corner, and you had to like bring it and place it down on like a log or a stump, for instance. And you had to do it like if there's water in it without spilling it.
And if you have 4 people trying to carry a bucket without actually touching the
Yeah.
bucket, that can be
Yeah.
pretty challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. But that was it. That's the last big event. That ends at 3:30. It's a hard stop there. And from there, now they go into our final area, which is the same place we started. It was a large dining hall building that's on the site. They check in. They turn in all of their cash, any gold that they may have earned. We still had a little bit of gold on this one, and their stock, and they were now cashed out. So they had the money turned in, which is effectively their score. And then they just kind of wait a little bit. It's about a half an hour for us to get everybody checked through. We figure out what it is. As Lucas said, we converted all their cash over into
Like-
envelopes,
Yeah, or like coins.
coins in this
and-
case. That way we had a different currency.
So you didn't have
for the
to
day.
carry your, because you had to split them up with everybody in your group, because one person can't take it all. You literally have to like deal it out to every single one in your patrol.
And then the auction starts and all heck breaks loose,
Yeah.
right?
It is.
Yes.
It's a good time.
Yelling,
it's a good
screaming.
45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
We
A lot of
sell
noise.
everything. Yeah, I think we sold a bag of carrots. Was that last year we did the
The
thought it was
potatoes,
potatoes.
potatoes?
giant
Maybe
bag of
carrots the year
potatoes.
before. We always, it's like whatever we have left over gets sold, and it's always kind of
Sometimes it
interesting.
even sells for
And
the
with that
biggest thing.
buying frenzy, it's like the gold frenzy. You know, if it's there, it's going to sell, right?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, the amount.
You could get it
that they
for
have to
100.
sell, yeah.
You could get it for 2,000. Who knows?
Yep, you never know what's going to go that day.
Yep.
Yeah, potato for $2,000. That sounds like the Yukon Gold Camps.
It kind of is, and again, it's a real fun time. At the end, everyone's able to walk away. We do have a patch that everyone that participates gets the patch. Scouts are kind of big about patches, and then of course there's the prizes. So there are trophies for first, second, and third. There's a Cub Scout division, and then there's a
Boy
Scout
Scouts.
division. So. The first, second, and third, it's based upon those numbers, and it's really hard. We've never really been able to predict during the day.
And don't people watch like how you progress in everything? Like
So this year you could through the there were scoreboards and things like that you kind of see, but all that it took was for one random act, and that stock market flipped.
yeah.
And there were people that were doing great up until 2 hours before the end, and then all of a sudden, stock market made a mess.
Well, we've run out of time here. I mean, this has been a great conversation, guys. Mike, would you just tell us how we can, anybody who might want to find out more about your troop and about the activities you do, how can they get in touch with you folks?
Well, of course, we're on the internet, t22whitman.org. We'll give you our website. The Scouts have made that, so you can actually see that it's not just outside building fires stuff. We also have a Facebook page, same thing, T22Whitman. Or we're at the Cardinal Spellman Center right here in the center of town. We meet on Thursdays from 7 till 9. It's most evenings. If there's no school, we don't have a meeting, but other than that, we're there. We welcome anyone that would like to come and join us.
And the Cub Scouts start a little bit earlier for
The
those
Cubs-
who have kids who are about Cub Scout age.
I think the
Yep.
Cub Scouts go from what, 7 to 8?
They go from about 6 to 6:30,
6 to,
but the same building. And important is to note is that we actually have 2 Scout troops now in town. There's 22B, which is our boy unit. We also have a new 22G, as girls are now welcome in Scouts. We have a group right there. They meet with us, and then they run their own activities. So boy or girl now, we'd
Boy
love to
or
have
girl.
you.
Okay, well we are out of time. We are just dead out of time. Keep your eyes peeled for the next edition of The Scout Is, and we'll see you then.